It's the How to Write Funny podcast. This is Scott Dickers, and on this episode, I'm talking with Ryan Creamer, who recently made a name for himself by making funny, wholesome meta videos on Pornhub. So, Ryan, you totally blew up this week. Like, you had a comedy career going, but like not too many people knew about you, and then all of a sudden, like overnight, you just blew up, and so many people heard about you and knew about you. And it's very exciting, and I want to drill into how all that happened. But for starters, like we all know, there's no such thing as an overnight success. You've obviously been working in comedy for a long time, and things like this don't happen by accident. But tell me just a little bit about how what you had been doing led up to this big break moment.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree that you got to, like, the reps lead to the whole thing happening. I kind of first got started doing it myself, like, I guess pursuing it alone and intentionally in college at Fordham. There's like a little black box theater there, and they have like improv sketch teams and stuff like that. And doing that was kind of my first foray into being with a community of people that were pursuing it and feeling like, oh, this is something that I'm intentionally interested in and want to continue pursuing.
That's Fordham University?
In the Bronx, yeah. And yeah, being one, just in a creative space, and then two, being around people that pursued things outside of Fordham and were pursuing stuff at UCB or going into the city and performing, really like kickstarted the work ethic in my mind. I was always interested in kind of like early on growing up before I got to college would be watching a lot of online sketch stuff, like early Lonely Island and early College Humor kind of planted the seeds that I was able then to like act upon once I got to college, I think.
Yeah, so did you go to Fordham for any particular reason? Like, did you think that was a good school to prepare you for comedy or not necessarily?
I think in so much as a lot of schools offer the opportunity, I originally wanted to go to NYU simply because the Lonely Island went there, and that was the scope of what I thought, would lead to a career in comedy, is just following what the few people I knew went and what they did. I looked up that the Lonely Island went to NYU, and my, tiny little brain at the time was like, oh, this is all the college decision making that I need to do. I went and visited, and I went, and it was like a student orientation. I think it was at Tisch. I can't remember the building specifically, but they sat everyone down in this big auditorium, and they were like, okay, everyone here, please raise your hand if you've like written a screenplay. And I look around, I see all these hands go up, and I was just like, oh my God, I am so far away from where all these people are. And I was so intimidated and just like, okay, clearly I'm out of my league here and this is not somewhere I belong. So I didn't go there.
And so Fordham was like, you were settling on that.
I hesitate to say that because I did have a great Fordham experience. It was more so like, I guess me being young and immature at the time, I assumed like, oh, the Lonely Island went here and they must have written screenplays too. Like, this is just an echelon of, I didn't put in the reps, the work that in my mind all these other kids did by the time they got there.
Right.
But Fordham was perfect for me and ended up being like gave me the autonomy and like almost the freedom, as opposed to a program that told you, all right, here's how you're going to do it. It kind of let me just be like, no one's going to give you, the playbook. You kind of have to write it yourself.
Yeah. So how long ago is this, by the way, that you're going to college?
My freshman year was 2010 and I graduated 2014.
Okay. So pretty recently.
Yeah.
And then when you got out, how did you start getting professional comedy work? Did you slog it out in the improv schools and such for a while?
Yeah. So kind of while I was at Fordham, I was in my, the free time that I had, I was freelancing articles to College Humor and Dorkly, which is their video game like sister site. I was taking classes at UCB, and so I was kind of lightly doing that stuff on the side. And so by the time that I got out, I didn't have a job waiting for me, and was still pretty like starry-eyed and assuming, I put in the work and I'll continue to. It'll probably happen for me eventually.
So how did you figure out like how to break through big publications like College Humor and that other stuff? Did you just kind of figure that out, or did you know people? Because a lot of people, it takes them a long time just to kind of get through and get articles submitted and published by some of these places.
Yeah, I didn't know people that worked there, but I had the benefit of like Streeter Seidel was College Humor, like, and he went to Fordham. So, and similarly to people that were above me grade wise and were getting big at UCB, it wasn't that people were like hooking me up, but it gave me like I'm seeing people that I know succeed in these things, and it gave me this confidence of like, well, I don't know, I'm not super tight with these people, and they're not really hooking me up or anything, but I can see that this can be done.
Got it. It just made it realistic for you and you pursued it. Did you
Right.
just go on their website and look for submission guidelines, or was it that cold or something
Yeah,
else?
I think I'm trying to think of exactly how I did it. I think yeah, every now and then there would they would post something of like, oh, we're looking for interns or we're looking for freelance stuff, and so I would. It was mostly to College Humor and Dorkly, which was kind of their sister website for video game stuff, that I would freelance, and more often than not they'd say, we're not really looking for what you're sending, but I was just as persistent as I could be while also doing my college thing.
So you're already in New York, and you can get to places like the UCB and presumably the College Humor headquarters, stuff like that.
Exactly. And yeah, I think that was a big push. My college decision process was I had a brother a year and a half older than me, and I kind of got dragged along to a bunch of colleges, and I was like, I don't really care. So it really boiled down to like, where is somewhere that I can realistically try to do some comedy stuff? So New York was kind of like a no-brainer.
And then did you go straight to the UCB and just get some sort of day job, or what was your kind of plan at that point? I'm assuming you're still, obsessed with trying to figure out how to do these online videos at some point, even at that time, correct?
Yeah, I think it was always something that I was kind of doing to whatever small extent that I could, just because it was like an itch that just needed to be scratched. I remember I got an iPhone late, and Vine was already like well on its like zenith, and I was
Yeah.
late to it. But I was just like, oh, I gotta be making these vines for like 6 people that we'll see.
Right.
Um, but so I was. I'm sorry. Your question was.
What did you do right after Fordham? Did you go straight to UCB, and were you still on that trajectory to try to figure out how to do short videos online?
Yes. So I was kind of dipping my toes in at UCB while at Fordham. I would like take classes while I was, in the middle of the school year. So by the time I got out, I had like one class of UCB to take. And from there, I kind of ran the gambit on working as an intern for a bunch of different like online, editorial companies. So I would write for College Humor. Um, Truly, the summer after graduating, Fordham, me and friends, because I had like helped out on the Chris Gethard show in their public access version of it, and that goes back to just seeing people do something and be like, oh, that gives me the confidence to do it. So that summer, me and like a group of 12 friends from Fordham just decided to do the most ambitious, insanely big bite of essentially shooting 7 episodes of a public access television show that
Wow.
is truly unwatchable now, but was very fun when we were making it.
And this is after you had worked on the Chris Gethard show?
Yeah, so I didn't to a large extent. I had worked at Diverge, which was the production company behind Improv Everywhere, and kind of the guys that were behind that had their hands in Chris Gethard's show also. So that's how I would just go to the set and like be a hand if needed. So I wasn't, by any means doing a lot, but it did make me be like, oh, let me try this.
Yeah, and did you know that Chris Gethard went through that whole UCB system as well?
I did, yeah. I mean, I wasn't as big a UCB head as some of my peers were, but I did get the whole trajectory of what he was doing and was like, oh, this is very cool, and spoke to like the kind of Lonely Island, like College Humor, like uh, just doing the thing that you wanted to do, which really appealed to me.
Right, right. So then after doing some of that, picking up some of that work, like how are you paying bills at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I said I didn't have a lot of privilege to allow me to work a bunch of internships out of school. It's certainly like it came with coming from a family that helped me financially a bit, and it is something I, hesitate to talk about or feel a little embarrassed by, but there's truly no way to work a bunch of like unpaid internships in comedy without having, I mean, it's just kind of a flawed system. So I did have a little, leeway financially, but I was, getting paid um, the little amount that these jobs paid, and bouncing around every 6 months to different ones. So
Yeah, no, I don't think you should be embarrassed because like everybody has to use all the tools at their disposal, and some people might not have that particular tool; they might have a different one. In this day and age, that's not really unusual that somebody straight out of college would still get some parental support. A lot of people go back and live at home and stuff, right?
right, yeah, it just strikes me as something this kind of pursuing this thing in general that is kind of like I feel like it's a baked in thing that just no one talks about, but it does fill me with a little bit of anxiety just being like, is this kind of like a rigged system that really, you know, not to get too deep into it, but favors people that can afford to work a bunch of, unpaid internships for however so long because they have the support to do so.
Yeah, like unless you're gonna live on the real outskirts of New York City and do a 2 hour commute into town every day, and work at Burger King on the weekends and
Exactly.
live in a shack, like, yeah, you're right. It is kind of a privileged way to get in. But then a lot of people
Right.
will do it way outside of New York and take a lot longer to get successful at it usually. Like where
Exactly.
did you look at the Lonely Island guys and what was the other one? The Birthday Boys? Who else did you mention?
Well, for me in like high school, it was Lonely Island was a huge influence, just deep diving on them, and then it was really like early College Humor, like those
Oh,
videos that,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, the College Humor videos.
Hmm.
So, did you look into where they came from? Were they also sort of like supported by parents doing it out of New York, or were they kind of in the middle of nowhere and got lucky?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I certainly deep dived every video that I could on them, but I don't think at the time I had the like maturity and scope to understand. I was just like, they're doing like, there's no complexity to this. It's just like they're crushing it and that they're succeeding. I don't think it was on my radar of like how are they financially doing so, but
I see, I
uh,
see.
yeah.
And then, how many years did you do this, like free jobs or very low paid jobs in comedy in New York?
I mean, so I graduated 2014 and bounced around to different internships and then other jobs that weren't writing for comedy or websites. It was just customer service jobs, whatever, would pay the bills. It was probably before being full time hired at College Humor. I was hired in 2016, so I guess two
Oh,
years.
so what kind of a full time gig did you get from them?
So I had the benefit of a buddy that I interned with. He's a designer, Amir Khan, who's a very funny guy. He essentially, when someone left the company, put my name in the ring, was just like, hey, they're looking for, and the job was mostly curating, like pulling stuff from Reddit tweets, just kind of the BuzzFeed style of business of here's a bunch of funny stuff curated into a list for you. So that was essentially the job description.
That's a great job for you, like based on what you're doing now and what's been happening, like, because you probably
Totally.
learned a ton about how to use Reddit and how to find like viral content and just getting
A
in that
hun-
world and getting in that space must have been hugely educational.
100%. I think that's a really good point because there is like a language of knowing what the internet finds funny right now, and I
Right.
was seeing that every day and getting a sense of like, okay, this is stuff that is like people think is outdated and no longer funny, and here's the kind of stuff people are drawn to. So I totally think that was helpful.
Awesome. So you got that job in 2016,
Hmm.
and is it still your job?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, just the way the industry is, the job title has kind of changed as the industry changes, just because ad money and it's such a just a
Sure.
constantly shifting market. So what my role has been has changed, but not so drastically. So it's essentially still kind of creating content now more for social than for like the website itself.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm sure, like any website now, they're getting all their traffic through social anyway, and they're trying to monetize the social more than the website.
That's exactly right.
So tell me a little about how you do that and how that works.
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of like a wild west of, and I do think College Humor has a very, in terms of, being a comedy site, has a very good adaptability, and that's obviously changed through whatever the 20 years it's existed. So this was a time when it required, you know, adapting to essentially what it changed from was like, okay, we're going to be less doing like, here's 15 funny tweets in a list, and now it's going to be like, essentially, we're going to stop pawning off other people's content as our own, which is something a lot of websites do, and it's just kind of the normalization of how we consume content right now.
Right.
And so while it still does that, as every place does, I think we're trying to focus more on creating original, just images that are joke formats that, at least can be like, well, we made this.
And then you can brand it College Humor, and that builds the brand or whatever, or is there an actual way to monetize it?
Yeah, so I mean, their business plan, our business plan has been launching a subscription-based service, and I think more and more sites are doing this. So essentially, the social content functions as advertising for it and drawing people to the subscription-based service.
Got it. And it sounds like you're doing mostly like memes and stuff like that. Is that what you're doing?
I mean, it used to be. I think that's how I would describe what I used to do in terms of here's like 20 memes that, on this thing that's trending right now. And now it's more so kind of per day. If it's like 20 years ago, this thing happened. It's just like very social, you know what I mean? Like social things that people click on and like.
Yeah. So that's your day job. And had you continued going to UCB classes through that time, or were you pretty much focusing your efforts on College Humor and that full-time job that you got in comedy over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I did the improv program because I had gotten on the improv team at school, and I was essentially like, I'm more concerned about like my team at school than like UCB, which was whatever. So I went through the system. I got on a Lloyd team in 2015, 2016, and those are like year-long teams.
What kind of team did you say?
So they're called Lloyd teams. They do shows, I think it's Wednesday nights, and they just do the Herald format, but it's essentially like the JV to Herald Knights varsity. So it was a team that has a year-long shelf life, and then after the year, they decided, Ryan, you gotta get out of here. So I got cut.
Okay.
And so that kind of made me, it hurt. It was like, it sucked. And then, so since that experience, just because of how much money it is to continue going to it, and already feeling the guilt of what a financial, this is a purely Catholic perspective, clearly, but I was like, I can't justify continuing to sink money into UCB, and it was, so I kind of like loved it, but it was also like, okay, I think I don't need to continue doing the program.
And so then after that, and when did that happen roughly?
So that was I think, if I remember, it was 2015, and then 2016 I got cut.
Okay.
I think that's right.
So you haven't really been doing improv at the UCB for a couple years.
Yeah, but I mean, I say that, and probably not as religiously or fervently as most do. I was doing it, but also like it wasn't consuming my time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You're just sort of dabbling in it or whatever.
Right.
Do you do like the one-man show, or do you like do an occasional guest spot on a night, stuff like that?
Yeah, now so more I'll do like characters on people's shows and like one-man sketch stuff. Like I saw Mike O'Brien perform. Essentially what he would do is like 20 minutes of written sketch stuff he would perform by himself, and I was like, oh, that's the style of stuff that I'd like to pursue.
Cool. And then were you doing any videos during this time?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like was constantly. I would, with the group that I made this public access show with, afterwards we're like, okay, let's like chill out and not do like 6 hours of content or whatever, and just like shoot sketch videos. So that was after the summer of 2014. From then on, it was a group called We Did It, and we would shoot videos, we would perform live at UCB, and we would do sketch stuff, which was a lot of fun.
Cool. And then you just put those sketches up on a YouTube channel or whatever, or Funny or Die? Or...
Yeah, we had a YouTube channel, and a couple of videos got pretty big on it, but we kind of, in terms of understanding the scope of YouTube's, like, we got in on the game when making sketch videos at YouTube was kind of a dying market, I think.
Right. And then did you ever sell any of those, or were you ever able to link any of those to College Humor to get extra traffic? Or
yeah, I would kind of unabashedly try to strong arm some stuff in. Like, I think when I was interning there, I was just like, we should like promote this sketch I made. So
and that actually worked?
Yeah, they'd throw me a bone. I don't think it was like something that they wanted to make a habit out of, but
Right, right. But again, through all that, you're probably learning a lot about like what kind of things go viral and what things people like and stuff like that. You're just kind
totally.
of steeped in it.
Yeah, it was definitely a process of understanding like certain videos um, you would send to like, oh, this publisher, we feel like this is like a vibe that they would promote. So it was kind of understanding that aspect of it, which was helpful.
So is that something else that you would do as part of your job is like send links to stuff that College Humor was trying to promote to certain blogs or other publishers to get more
Not
traffic?
mine specifically. Like that's a department. I'm more edit. I guess my umbrella would be editorial, and I think marketing and sales, I guess, would be a little bit more reaching out to other places about that kind of stuff.
Okay, so then what led you to the Pornhub videos, which is obviously what caused you to really kind of break out big this week?
Right. Um, I mean, it was very kind of an idea that happened on a whim. It was truly being on Pornhub.com and scrolling down. There was like a work with us tab, and I will say like the groundwork I do feel like had been laid in that the comment section and the vibe of the site itself is already very funny. I do think like the comment section in on Pornhub.com is like one of the funniest places like to read things online right now.
Like, is it
So I
unwittingly funny or like actually really funny?
Oh, it's very funny. It's people that are very self-aware and are like
Okay.
just commenting stuff like, "Hey, can someone help me with like my math homework?" And someone being like, "Sure, like I'll help you with your math homework."
Oh, that's funny.
Um, so yeah, it was a vibe that was like, "Oh, there are people being funny here." I didn't trailblaze that, I don't think, but it was knowing that, seeing the work with us tab, and then clicking it, and they have like a model payment program. So if you work in the industry, you essentially partner with them, and you get ad revenue based on your videos. And I didn't think anything further than me doing this specifically is funny. And so you have to get verified. The verification process is very simple. You like take a picture with a piece of paper that says your name on it, and then within 2 days I was verified. So I was like, the fact that I'm verified on here and not Twitter is very funny to me.
So pretty whimsical, easy process to get on there,
Yeah.
which is great. And it's what I often tell people. Like, in fact, I wrote a whole chapter about this in my book. Like,
Hmm.
how do you get people to see your work? Like, how do you break through and actually find new ways to get seen? And
Hmm.
you just stumbled on something super brilliant. It was like this wide open field. Nobody was doing comedy videos on Pornhub,
Hmm.
and you were so steeped in comedy, it like makes sense that you would think of that. But then the real question is like, how did you come up with the comedic conceit of your videos? Because a lot of people could have signed up for Pornhub and tried to do like wacky, funny porn parody videos or something that wouldn't have
Right.
worked, but you hit on just a really ingenious tack.
I appreciate that. I think, I mean, part of it's just my sensibilities of kind of being drawn to like the Will Ferrell kind of like sweet, wholesome, like that is just a comedic sensibility I have. So
Mhm.
when getting to the point of like, okay, I'm verified on Pornhub, what do I do with this? The instinct that I had was um, like I had to think of like if I'm gonna pursue this, I have a family. Like I can't do just like
Right.
I have to do something where I'm fully clothed and it's totally okay. Um, so essentially, the limitations of like having to live a life that doesn't bring shame to people that I love was like, okay, the constraints are this is where I'm at. I got to do it fully clothed, and then it was like, oh, I'll just try to subvert, you know, uh, all the porn tropes by being really nice and wholesome.
So it was really that simple. Not a real lot of brainstorming went into it.
Well, I mean, to be honest, when it first started, yeah. I mean, now that it's like kind of a tone that I understand, I'll like sit down and write and think ideas for it. But
Yeah.
um, it was to start off truly a night that I made the decision to do it, and it kind of happened like that. Yeah.
That's so great. Did you happen to see in the most recent episode of SNL, there was a skit that I wondered if it was inspired by what had happened to you. There was
Really?
there was a skit where it was like a family at dinner and Keenan Thompson was like the dad at this dinner and they were like with their maybe son and his girlfriend or something like that, where it's like this potentially awkward family situation. And he was saying how business was really good for him lately and everything was going well. And the game of the scene is that he's on a porn site and he's just like spreading his ass cheeks for other men to look at. Like that's what the kink, that's his kink, and that's what he's doing. And he's like super proud of it and totally unembarrassed about it. And his wife is like, "Good for you, honey," because he's making a lot of money. But the kids are just going crazy because they're like, "Wait, no, Ted, no, don't."
Right.
I wonder. I really do wonder. When I saw it, I was like, "Oh my God! I bet they heard about Ryan and came up with this idea."
I gotta get Keenan on the horn and let him ask if he's stealing my ideas. Yeah.
Oh no, it's not about stealing. I think they were totally inspired by what had happened and just came up with the idea, or maybe they didn't. Maybe it was random chance.
That's very funny.
I don't know. But so restrictions are often really helpful in comedy, like to have really clear parameters.
Totally. And to what you were saying earlier, and I don't think this was something I consciously was thinking of when doing it, but what you were saying about being kind of the first somewhere is something that stuck with me. Brendan O'Hare, who's very funny on Twitter, and I have not met personally, but a friend of mine told me something that has stuck with me, was that he was just like, yeah, being the first somewhere or being early to a thing, as I think he said he was to Twitter, is huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, The Onion was the first humor website. That was a big deal.
Yep.
So, yeah, congratulations. It really was just an ingenious move. And so
I appreciate that.
Tell us about some of the videos that you've done and like what the reaction has been.
I mean, the reaction has been just overwhelmingly positive. There's very few people that have mean things to say about it. I do feel like putting the nice, wholesome, kind energy out there has just gotten that in return. But I mean, the first two videos that I put out within, I think it was over the course of 2 weeks, they got really big on Reddit, and it was just like, I think the idea of it just being something that was new and hadn't been seen before, that was enough of a reaction to me to be like, oh, that's so cool. And then that was kind of like in November.
And what were the first two?
The first one was I tuck you in after you come.
Okay. And
the second one was I encourage you as you continue looking for a video to come to or masturbate to or whatever.
Okay. So you actually got more wholesome as time went on, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I mean, and the benefit of them was they could be like screenshotted and shared to whatever, just the thumbnail, like the title, my smiling face, worked in and of itself to be like, oh, we can post this. So it'd be on Tumblr, Reddit, all these places.
Right.
Which helps because, people stumbling upon it on Pornhub had to be very few.
Yeah. Or searching for something like that.
Right.
But then didn't you get comments from women later saying that they actually had been looking for something like that, something really wholesome?
Yeah, I mean, it's so always hard for me to determine who's like playing along with the joke and who sincerely is like, I really like enjoy this.
Right.
There has been an aspect of, part of the response has just been like, this is funny, but this is also just like really nice to see. This like makes me feel good.
Right.
Which is nice. I'm glad it does both of those things.
Yeah. So take us back to the process then. So you did those first two, and it seems like you're trying to find your voice still. You're not totally Mr. Wholesome yet with those first two videos back in November.
Exactly.
And then what happens?
I mean, then after those two got big, I was like, these aren't hard to film. They take like maybe 5-10 minutes to do. So I was like, there's no reason I shouldn't keep doing these. That they're getting a good response. So yeah, it was after seeing the response on Reddit where it's just like, okay, I'm gonna try to do like one a week. I'm gonna just keep doing this, and if after 3 or 4 of these it's just like, oh, this guy's still doing this, like no one cares about this. I was just like, I don't know. I was really playing it by ear and just being like, I guess I'll just keep doing this. But yeah, so I did it. I'd say it maintained the same level of kind of being shared around. It would get big on like random Twitter accounts of people screenshotting and being like, who is this? This is crazy. Just like, the social media language of like, I'm dying. Who did this?
Now, how did you see those on Twitter? Are they literally tagging you so you can find them, or?
Yeah, it would be funny because people that I know, there was like a fun little network that got created itself of just like people sending me stuff of like, dude, you're on my feed. Like I'm seeing you on, whatever wholesome memes Twitter account or whatever.
I see. Okay.
So I was hardly on the hunt. I would see some stuff sometimes, but it would be a lot of people that I know sending me when they'd see me.
Got it.
But I think it kind of maintained that level of every now and then there'd be a random social post that really blew up, and then kind of late January was when a lot of like websites and press were like, "Oh, we can cover this and it will get clicks because it's kind of about sex, but also not,"
Yeah.
and that like really ramped things up even further, which was crazy.
Yeah, totally more wholesome than like your average Maxim piece
Yeah, yeah,
to write about.
right, exactly.
Then you got contacted by what were some of the big ones? I saw the BuzzFeed one.
Yeah, the BuzzFeed one was big because I think after that there's kind of like a waterfall of other publications who are like, okay, we'll get this interview as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it changed the game of being like this is something that kind of an anonymous weird guy is doing online to something like, oh, this is, you know, is this guy's real name? This is a name that I now know, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and everybody thinks the name is fake.
Yeah, they do. They really, and some people are like kind of adamant. They're like, you're lying. You're wrong.
Right. Right. Oh, that must be great. And then
Yeah.
this week, I believe Wednesday, you were on the front page of Reddit.
Oh yeah.
So tell me how that works, because it sounds like you were pretty adept at Reddit yourself. So did you
It
do you
yeah.
feel like you finessed that a little bit and helped make that happen, or did your
It would
expertise play
be
a part?
it would be a better story if I did, but I didn't. It's funny because I go into work and that's essentially where I go to do my work is you have to scroll through it and just kind of whatever. So it will be like going to work and then seeing myself on there.
Yeah, and
And
like
I did
College Humor is probably telling you every day, like, get us on the front page of Reddit, get us on the front page of Reddit, right?
right, right. Oh yeah, they're like we couldn't pay for the press that you're getting with this right now.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't have a whole lot to do with it popping up places in terms of influencing or trying to post my own stuff. And I think part of it was realizing I feel like this is a solid idea, and if it's going to get shared, I don't need to do a lot of legwork for it.
Yeah, you just show up and you keep doing it, and people love it. So what have been some of the videos you've done that have been the biggest hits at this point?
I think view-wise, the first two have been really big. One of them, just because it is like, you know, I tuck you in after you come. It does have like, you watch this after you watch the video that you're here for.
Right, right.
But the one that I'm trying to be open to people pitching ideas because I think there is a mix of people that have stuff they genuinely want to see in addition to it being funny. So
Sure.
one of the earlier ones that I pit someone on the Pornhub site itself pitched do the dishes without being asked.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I'm trying to kind of keep my eye out for that in terms of still doing things that are like subverty and parody, but also taking suggestions of. I mean, clearly, if people are responding to this, I should be listening and doing what they want a little bit.
Yeah, that one was especially funny, the doing dishes. It's had a really sort of Andy Kaufman quality because a lot of it
Yeah.
is just like dead time, just watching you do the dishes.
Right. Right.
Which is
It's
so
exactly
great.
what. Right.
It's like anti-humor.
Uh, exactly. So yeah, I'm trying to think of in terms of successful, which uh, the least successful in my eyes. I did one where I because I was like, it's funny that I wear this outfit every time, and it'd be funny if I do it in the shower because there's a bunch of shower porn and whatever.
Sure.
But I probably ruined my clothes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, have you thought about turning this into a career? Because, like, you realize, like, getting that kind of response online is kind of the commodity in the entertainment business right now. And there
Totally.
are probably people who would buy merchandise from you, and you could do a book. And have you started thinking about all that stuff?
I definitely have. Yeah, it's a little bit. I'm excited by it because I'm like, I like being in the driver's seat and potentially being able to. I've essentially been reaching out to Pornhub and trying to figure out the legality of merchandising.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the process I'm at there of just being like, I don't want to make stuff. I don't know who technically owns. I don't want to make merchandising and then having to be like, you can't make that. That's not allowed.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that like Pornhub is basically like an advertising site for like big porn companies. People like their porn videos, they go to their site and pay or something.
Right.
So if you wanted to, couldn't you just do like put up your own website and then have Pornhub be like an advertising venue for you?
Yeah, I think I there's I I would be lying if I say I knew exactly like how that works.
Yeah, it sounds like
Um,
you're just figuring that out.
I'm trying to, and I
Yeah.
definitely am not blind to the fact that this is a big opportunity that I can be monetizing. I just need to like get my ducks in a row and try to figure out. I don't want to like misstep before I do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and are you familiar with the book New Erotica for Feminists?
No, I'm not.
So, Caitlin Kunkel is one of the authors, and I think there's some other people who probably went through UCB or at least one of the other improv troops in New York. And it's a book of erotica for women that's very similar to your videos. It's like a piece about a boss calling a woman into his office, and it's written like erotica, like it's very sexy, and there's going to
Oh
be
yeah, yeah,
some rough sex play. But all he does is offers her a pay increase because she's been doing such a great job. You know what I mean?
yeah. That's great.
They've done really well with that book. You should probably talk to them.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm a totally the more I can milk out of this, I gotta.
Yeah, or at least learn from them like the process of going through and doing a book and how that was. Because
Totally.
in the 70s, there were like these big porn star bio books, like John Holmes, would do these biographies or these autobiographies.
Hmm.
And it would be fun to see you do like a parody of that as the
Yeah,
wholesome
yeah,
guy.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
there's so much possibility. It's just really exciting. And I'm
It
so
is. It's
excited
very.
for your success. It's just so amazing. And the videos are so funny.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So tell me about your early childhood and like what do you think drove you to wanting to do comedy in the first place, besides just seeing those videos and thinking they were fun and wanting to be involved? Was there
Sure.
something about your family dynamic or how you were in school that drew you to comedy?
What I've been told and what I do remember is that when we got like our first camcorder, to film like Christmas singing rehearsals or whatever, there's like videotape of me just being like, "Oh, can I see that? Can I shoot with it?" And I would, with my brother and sister, just like we wouldn't like script anything out. Obviously, it would just kind of be like roll camera and like try to create like scenes, little like fun things. And so it was something that I really like because I wasn't a big theater person. I did like to play senior year of high school, like Troy Bolton style of doing sports, and then like I'm gonna try for the play. But
Right.
when I was like a kid, I really liked being in this like comfortable vacuum of my house and being like, oh, I can shoot and make stuff that it felt like a creative outlet for me that was planted pretty young.
And was the vibe among you and your siblings kind of the same? You all like to do that, or did you like it especially?
No, yeah, I think I probably forced them to do it more than they wanted to.
Okay.
My brother was probably the least excited about being on it. My sister, who's younger, was more like down for it. But it was definitely like me kind of being like, "Come on, guys, we're doing it."
Right. You're the ringleader.
Exactly, yeah. But so being the middle child, that was my attempt at having the control of the siblings.
Do you still have some of those videos, and I assume they're just as embarrassing as your cable access effort?
Honestly, they're more endearing because I'm like 8 as
Okay,
opposed to
great,
being
great.
like college age and being like, this is funny. And both are, I think one year for Christmas or a birthday, I had asked to have like those old tapes like put onto DVDs or whatever so that I could have them still. So they're lying around somewhere, but I gotta find them.
Now, tell me a little bit about, if you don't mind drilling in, your process for coming up with ideas. You kind of glossed over it really quickly when we were
Sure.
talking about it, like, oh yeah, I just came up with some ideas and it seems very whimsical. But are you using like techniques you learned from improv to brainstorm ideas, or are you really just using pure gut instinct and what you think might be funny?
Totally. Well, I do think I'm not trying to like put a curtain in front of the process. I do think years of pursuing this have refined my taste to the point where I do feel like it's easier for me to do. But having said that, it is like specifically for me for this idea, it's having to go on Pornhub and be like, what are like think well-known tropes enough that are like fun to play on and make wholesome. So it's truly researching, just watching porn and like seeing thumbnails and seeing how what you can put in the title that like riffs on something in a funny way.
Yeah, and one of the ones like that that I really thought was clever was the stepbrother one.
Ah, yes, yes.
Maybe you can remind me of the exact headline, but I thought that was a really great comedic construct. It's such great irony.
Yes.
And meta humor like they all are, and obviously wonderful parody.
That one was I, your stepbrother, decline your advances, but I'm flattered nonetheless.
Right. And again, with the totally wholesome, kindly vibe. And that's something you have in common with Andrew Daly, is that you have this super nice guy quality. And so despite the idea, like your personality and just the equipment that you bring to the table as an actor, like totally plays into this.
Oh man, I couldn't be more overjoyed to hear any comparison to Andy Daly, because it's exactly the vibe that I strive for. I just think it's so funny, and part of it is just understanding the packaging with which you are, like knowing what you look like and being like, well, I'm just gonna lean into this.
Totally. So it sounds like you're using some external source material to like look at and just to generate ideas. So you're not just like staring at a blank page. And that makes sense because you're parodying porn. So you want to look at porn and look at categories and see like, okay, what would be a funny, wholesome twist on some of these ideas or whatever.
Exactly.
And then you're also bringing into play the fact that you've been doing this for so long, you have so much experience, which again is so valuable. And again, people often ask me like, how do I get into this? How do I do this? And I always tell them, you just have to be doing it. You have to do it a lot.
Yes.
Because the more you do it, like, first of all, if you enjoy doing it, you're doing it anyway. You don't have to be told to do it. But, and you're happy, you're loving your life because you're doing what you love. But the more you do something, the better you get at it and the more experience you get. And I think people are afraid that their first video is going to suck and no one will like it. And they'll be like, I can't do this. I should stop.
100%.
What they don't realize is that the more you do, of course, the first ones are going to suck. Everybody's first videos sucked. Like your cable show, you were saying, is a big embarrassment to you. But then, you do 100 of them and pretty soon you get to this point where you are, where you've kind of put in those Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours and you're kind of a master of this genre of making short videos, plus your day job. Like that gives you so much more context and experience and just like real world know-how about how certain videos work. So you had this like total like magic cauldron of the perfect ingredients to be able to capitalize on this wonderful, surprising opportunity to get your comedy seen and to really break out in a way that everybody in comedy kind of dreams of.
Yeah. It's a mix of knowing that I've put in work, but also it's a lot of luck. I think that's always a part of it. But to what you were saying before that I really agree with is when you're starting out and making stuff that sucks, what benefited me was truly having delusions of grandeur and just feeling like this thing that I'm doing is the thing, and just being wrong and being like, this is going to be my big break, because I had the benefit of just doing it brought me joy and it will continue to. So I think that also is a huge part of it, is the people that will succeed are, you just need to do it because you like to do it. But I do think it is beneficial when you're starting out to just be like, yeah, I believe this is great. And then you'll get to a point when you look back and you're like, nope, it wasn't.
Yeah. And another thing I've been realizing recently that I think is a big component that you totally bring to this is joy of doing it. So I think the audience is like a dog, and like a dog can smell fear. The audience can smell when you're not into it and you're not enjoying it.
100%.
When you are enjoying it, that's infectious and it makes it so much funnier. It's like Will Ferrell movies. Like, he's having the time of his life being a goofball.
That's the thing.
And it really comes across. Even if you don't even like the comedy that much, you can't deny that, come on, this is fun, you know?
That specifically is probably the biggest thing I took from UCB, and seeing specifically a performer, Aaron Jackson, who I love so much, because it was just that. It was watching someone who really enjoyed doing what they were doing. And it was like, I mean, I want to see that. I don't want to see someone who's like
right.
drudging through it.
You don't want to see someone who's desperate, who's like only doing this so they can get an invitation to submit to a late night show or whatever.
Exactly.
You want to see somebody who's doing it because they purely love doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that totally comes across with your videos. And
I'm glad. That's great.
Part of what makes them so good.
Yeah, I think that was in Amy Poehler's book as well. Was just like, no one ever looks stupid when they're genuinely having fun.
Yeah, that's a great quote from her. Absolutely. I love that. It's up on the wall at Second City, actually.
Yeah.
So has anything changed for you, like, since you blew up? I know it's recent. It's been like maybe a few days, couple weeks that you've really been on the lips of everybody in the comedy industry, at least as far as I've experienced. What has that been like, and what have you experienced, and how are things different, if at all?
It's been very interesting, because for me, my specific case has been like a lot of change in just my day-to-day and like using my phone. Like, the amount of people that I don't know that are now like reaching out to me, or just like saying nice things or interacting with me at all. Like, the amount of followers on Twitter and Instagram, and people sending me stuff just constantly that I don't know. Like, me having to respond to people that I don't know and just being like, hey, thanks for like saying a nice thing, is like now a daily like part of my day, which has been crazy. So it has been a little bit of like a reality bending, and feeling like, wow, this is, 4 weeks ago, none of this was anything that I was doing.
Right. So
there's,
you didn't really have the time in your schedule built in for that.
No, I mean, it's not like I'm responding to everyone or everything. I try to, as at least a little bit, but the fact that it's even like, something that's on my radar now has just been like, it's so hard to explain. It's so foreign to every part of my life prior to this.
Where you're basically desperately trying to get other people's attention, and now they're they're trying to get yours.
Yes, exactly. It's like, I guess this is what I've wanted, and once you're like presented with it, it's a little disorienting.
Like the dog who caught the car.
Yes, exactly.
It was great talking to you, Ryan, and I'm so excited about your career, and I'm really going to be watching and seeing all the cool things that you get into after this. I think this is just the beginning.
I really appreciate it. Back at you. Take care.
Hey, this is Scott Tickers. Thanks for listening. Do you like this podcast? If you do, take a second to leave a nice review on iTunes. And for more podcasts, articles, and free ebooks about how to write and succeed in comedy, go to howtowritefunny.com.